There's a lot of noise. I can't escape it. You can hear all the farm animals from here. Okay, welcome back to Rocky Mountain Homestead. I am so glad you guys are here. Don't mind the noise in the background. In today's video, I want to take you guys along, and I wanted to do a video on 10 of the most common mistakes when trying to create a food pantry or any type of food storage. So I was thinking last night, I was going through some comments trying to catch up on them, and I saw a couple comments on people who are more interested in filling in the gaps right now and wanting to make a longer term pantry and asking questions on how to do so. But what I want to touch on is 10 of the most common mistakes that I've personally found while trying to create a food storage for my family. I actually wrote it down at a list that I went through last night of what my mistakes were, and the first one I'm going to say is storing food in inadequate conditions. Proper temperatures and light exposure and moisture can spoil food more quickly. Now, I learned this because we got new lighting. We had electricians recently come to our home, but where my lighting was in the pantry before, it was like directional lighting, and the bulbs got hot. And when I say hot, like if you just turned them on a couple seconds later, you wouldn't be able to touch them. They were so hot. So they put off a lot of heat. And on the top row of my pantry on the left side is all my freeze-dried stuff in glass jars. You see where I'm going with this? And we have kids, and they would leave lights on for lengthy amount of time, and that would actually, it caused moisture to creep back up in the jars. Long story short, there was a lot of stuff we had to eat through quickly because it was softening up, and it wasn't ideal to store long term. The temperatures that you want to store food at are usually generally in between 50 to 70 degrees. Cool, dark, dry place. The next one is huge, and I hear people complain about this all the time: not rotating your stock. It's great to stock up on things and fill in the gaps and find good sales, find good deals, and make purchases and store it. But if you're not rotating through your stock regularly, you're going to more than likely run into issues. First off, you can very easily, especially if you're not organized, you can very easily lose track of what you already have, what you've already purchased. You can purchase way more of one food item than you actually need, or that you can eat through quickly enough for your family. Rotating it is very important. And yes, there's best by dates, and I know there are best by dates on things, and some things can last years and years past, and some foods are indefinite. But with that being said, you really want to enjoy your food items. You want to enjoy your food items at a better quality. You want a better quality with your food items that you're eating. So you're going to want to go through things sooner than later. I think it's really important to rotate your food items. And then some notes that I just put on that is, it is, like I said, easy to forget what you already have. Which can cause, it's more likely to cause your foods to actually expire that way. First in, first out. So that's a really good method to go by when I buy something like, okay, my pantry next to our fridge, I have condiments. I have a shelf of condiments. So if I have 3 ketchups on the shelf and I go to Sam's Club or wherever and I go pick up a 3-pack of ketchup, I'm going to not only label them and date them, but I'm going to put them behind the ones that need to be used first. So always do that, and put whatever is newest behind what you need to use up first. It's also really helpful to label your food items. I always put the best by date, even though I know it's just a best by date. But if I have something on the shelf right now, okay, if I have something that says October 2023 and I have something that says November 2025, I'm going to want to go with something with a later date, or a date that's already maybe a little bit past that best by date, instead of using something that still has a while to go before the best by date, if that makes sense. It's also helpful to keep an inventory sheet or a notebook in your pantry handy. I personally feel I have too much, so I would be really overwhelmed trying to keep stock. And my kids are really big on cooking and baking too, so they're using stuff, and I'm not even, I personally don't have the time to do an inventory sheet. I kind of already know where everything is because it is pretty organized in my pantry, but that's definitely an option for you as well. If you don't have multiple people taking out of your pantry all the time, you could easily keep track of what you have and what you're running out of. Number 3, overlooking the use of oxygen absorbers. So I did this when I first started freeze drying. And when I first got my freeze dryer, I figured we would eat through it right away, and I'd put it in jars. And even, I don't know, after a couple months, like some things got, and it could have been because of my lighting, but some things weren't crisp. They were starting to get a little soft, a little bit chewy. The freeze dried apples, just the texture was like kind of spongy. You could push it and leave indents on it, and I'm like, oh, that's not good. So I think that's definitely something that's overlooked a lot of the time too. You know, you can store things in a food grade 5-gallon bucket, and if you do that, you can throw in some oxygen absorbers for your dry goods like beans and rice. You can very easily do that. My turkeys, sorry, my turkeys are out. I didn't know my kids let them out. Anyway, I thought we have wild turkeys right now too, and I just saw a ton down the road, and I'm like, are they in my yard? But no, those are mine. So anyway, basically oxygen is the enemy of our food, and so you want to keep that out, and also to keep note of pests thrive in oxygen-rich environments. So that's just a fact. So you can have a lot of issues, and you can have foods spoil quickly. So really important. And once again, if you want to store things to go even longer, Mylar bags, oxygen absorbers, food grade buckets is the way to go. Number 4, storing too much of one item. I think I actually already said this, but yes, it's true. You can store too much of one item. When you're trying to make a pantry, build a pantry, a long-term pantry, you want diversity in that. You got to think, if there was an emergency situation, you want your foods in your pantry to be able to meet all your nutritional needs. So not only are you going to want grains, you're going to want rice, you're going to want beans, you're going to, and by grains I mean like wheat berries and things like that, sugar, your baking staples, vegetables, fruits, canned fruits and vegetables, canned meats. You're going to want a variety where you can actually make a meal if you needed to rely on solely what was in there. Like no fresh produce, no refrigerated perishables, nothing like that. Just look at your pantry, and could you make meals out of your pantry alone? And I've had people comment before on my pantry video, like, do you guys ever eat anything fresh? Not out of a can, not out of a jar. Yeah, like every single day. But that's what I fall back on in my pantry for the days that I am just way too busy. I have way too much going on to actually take the time and cut up fresh fruits or vegetables, or maybe didn't have time to go to the store. And that's when I go there. If I forgot to thaw meat, I have pressure canned meats on the shelf ready to go, and I can make a meal in a pinch really quickly out of my pantry. So I do like it well stocked, but it is not something that we're eating out of every single day, canned and jarred items. And you want to be sure your pantry is going to be able to meet all your nutritional needs during a emergency. Number 5, forgetting to date and label. So that's something kind of like rotating your foods. I always put the best by date, like I said, because right now I can go in there and see ketchup that maybe is going to have a best by date coming up in the next 2 months. And then maybe something I bought last month that's like good till 2026. You're going to obviously want to use what is older. Even though it's still good past the best by date, you're going to want to keep track of that. So I always get a permanent marker, and with the Sharpie, I just put the best by date. So I visually see it when I go in there, and I know, okay, this has to be used up before any of the other foods in that section. Labeling, also labeling if you have a lot of glass jars. I have glass jars, we'll get to this in a minute, but I have a lot of things in glass jars, and there's reasons for that. But also labeling, so like I said, my kids are really into cooking and baking right now, but they might not know the difference like I would between baking soda and iodized salt or sugar. This came up in one of my pantry videos. I actually made sweet tea, and I was in a hurry, and there were two containers not labeled, or I switched the color of the lids or whatever, and I made sweet tea with salt. You know, sweet tea's got a lot of sugar. There's a lot of stirring going on with real sweet tea. My husband took a drink and it was salt, and he ran so fast to the kitchen sink. And so many people commented in that video. There was one lady, this poor woman, she said that they ran out of sugar. She was going to can a bunch of, I think, jams and jellies after she got off work, and her husband surprised her. She came home and he had canned all their produce, and he's like, yeah, I found a bucket of sugar down in the basement, and she's like, that was salt. So there's much more worse stories I've heard than mine from my own personal experience, but label, because you might forget. My mind, I always tell myself, oh yeah, I'll know what that is, but then I'm like, I very easily can second guess myself and be like, no, you know what, I'm totally going to forget. And I'm totally going to forget what is in that bucket. Number 6, not taking into account preferences, food preferences, and dietary needs. So this is not one that really is a concern of ours, but that very easily could change. Consider allergies, consider nutritional requirements. If you, like me personally right now, I'm on like a high protein, low calorie diet. If there's a very big emergency situation and things are chaotic, I'm not going to care about high protein, you know, low calorie type diet foods, but I do keep that in mind to be sure that I have a lot of foods that are high in protein in my pantry, because even if there is an emergency scenario, you're going to want to take in as much protein as you can. So those are some nutritional needs to consider. Also, do not, I've mentioned this in my pantry video, do not make the mistake I've done and buy foods that your family has never eaten or wouldn't normally eat. I bought things 2020, guys. Who else has? Like, that's the only thing on the shelf. I'm gonna buy it because it might not be there tomorrow, and everything that I'm here for is not here, so something's better than nothing. I bought stuff during the pandemic and I still have Spam on my shelf because for the past 4 years we don't eat it. I grew up on it. I'm not hating on anybody who likes Spam. I had so much of it as a kid. I despise it, but I bought it because I know it has a very lengthy shelf life. But once again, bought it during the pandemic, and now I'm just looking at it like it's still within Best By date. So I think I'm just going to give it to a food pantry. Part of me is like, I just want to hold on to it because who knows what the future is going to hold, and we might actually need it, but I don't know what I'm going to do with that. But don't get yourself in that predicament where you're buying things your family doesn't normally eat. Even if it's a good sale, chances are it's potentially still going to be sitting on your shelf for a while untouched. Number 7, storing perishable foods for too long. So we know dehydrated, freeze-dried foods, even canned foods, they can go well past their Best By date. You can store them for long-term storage. You can extend the shelf life depending on how you store things. Like I said, this is going to come down to Best By dates, and some things do not last as long. Like nuts, you know, a lot of people store them in the freezer. If you're like me, you have no room in your freezer and they're on a shelf. But just make sure you're not buying more than you can consume in the amount of time that you need to. Some foods are more sensitive, like brown rice. There are certain foods that do go rancid much quicker, cooking oils and things like that. So that's why it's very important to also always rotate, like I said, your stock of what's in your pantry. Number 7, ignoring pest control. We have a lot of field mice. Like, we're in the mountains. There's a lot of field mice. Like, every time you look somewhere in our yard, they're running into rocks. They're running into holes under rocks. They're everywhere. We have a lot of cats. So I've got to say, we personally have not had much of a problem with mice, but in my pantry, so we have a log home, and if you've ever seen one of my pantry tours, then you'd see that we have log beams going across our ceiling. Well, it connects from the laundry room to the pantry, and there was an opening somehow up in that side of the ceiling. The wall goes downward, basically down to a crawl space in our mechanical room. Long story short, it's like a mouse obstacle course. So somehow they came up, they were getting into our mechanical room under our crawl space in our house last year and crawled up, got all the way up to the second floor, got into our laundry room, got into our pantry. So I was going to get vegetable oil off the very top shelf or some kind of oil in my pantry last year, and I saw mouse poop, and I'm like, oh, you have got to be kidding me. And I do store things in glass jars now, but that was the first time we actually had a mouse problem on that part of our floor, because we have a very busy, loud house. So it very much is surprising that anything would even dare come up there. So they were getting into the pantry though, and they were peeing on the wood shelf. They were pooping up there. There was cardboard. Like I had some cardboard boxes in the back of things in bulk, and anyway, it was an issue. So there's some natural deterrents that you can do. Some people, when they store like flour and beans and Mylar bags and stuff, you can put, so like if you seal up your Mylar bag, you can put like some bay leaves. That's a natural deterrent. You can put these mouse traps, obviously. We've used those. You can do mouse traps. You can also do cotton balls with like essential oils. There's some essential oils that mice definitely cannot stand, like peppermint and a couple other ones. So that was something that I totally neglected, because I'm like, yeah, we don't have a mouse problem, and surprise, and they can do damage, and they can do damage very quickly. So like as quickly as I'd clean that area up, a couple days later, it would just be right back to, you could tell there was a presence of them again. So, and once they pee, it's like it draws any other mice to that area, and yeah, you don't want that. So definitely do not ignore your pest control. I know back when we lived in Florida, there were bugs all over everywhere. I do not miss anything about Florida at all, but bugs everywhere. And it does not matter how clean your home is, they will find a way in. Roaches, everything. I don't miss it. I don't miss it at all. Ignoring moisture control. So you got to keep in mind moisture control, and kind of like what I was saying, my lighting, it didn't hit me, till it was too late, but my lighting, it was directional. It was aimed right at my jars so I could see, and everything was lit up. The lighting in there now is 1,000,000 times better. It is like brighter than a grocery store in there, and they're LED so it doesn't get hot. But the lights that I had before actually caused moisture to grow and build up in my jars, because it was like direct heated light right at my glass jars. Not a good mixture. And I have canned things, I have dehydrated things, and freeze dried, and moisture, humidity, that can really compromise food very quickly and start to cause it to deteriorate and spoil. It is growing grounds for mold, for bacteria, and you don't want any of that in your food. So keep in mind also, if you're in a flood prone area, keep things off the floor, up on shelves. I've heard of people who have lost so much stuff because it was on a floor. And even if you're not in a flood prone area, and like say you have a basement or mechanical room, keep in mind, like if above, a lot of people have like water pipes running across their ceiling, there can be leaks, things can break. Just take into consideration the location of your food. And that's also going to lead me to number 10, putting things in the wrong type of containers. So boxes, cardboard, I don't like the look of that. I don't like it, because if things are in a cardboard box, you can't visually see it. And a lot of times when you have kids, I'm not like, this is people do this. My husband does this. I do it from time to time out of laziness, but like some people put stuff back and it's like pretty much empty, or it's like, why would you even save this much? Like it's like that much of something. And so you go grab a cardboard box and you realize there's like nothing in this. So that there's been many times in the past when I used to like just keep things in the packaging that it came from. I wouldn't know what was inside of it. I wouldn't know how much of it was left. I didn't know how much of it we actually had. And I like the glass jars, and a lot of people are like, why do you have so many glass jars? Because it's safe to store your food in. Yes, it's more prone to breaking, but I can visually see it. I know what it is. I can label the jar if I need to, like if it's like, like I said, the salt and the sugar type thing, I can label it and see what it is, but I can see how much of it is in there. I can also see if there's any type of problems developing with the food, like if moisture is getting into the jars, kind of like my freeze-dried food that I said I store in the glass half-gallon jars. I can visually see that. So I was visually able to see like raspberries and you know, things like kind of sticking to the glass where like there was like a little bit of moisture building up in between the glass and the food. And I was like, that was my indication, but like if I didn't store it in something clear, I wouldn't have known there was a problem. So it's just really good to be able to see the foods that you have. Putting things in an airtight container, also like a glass jar, is really helpful for keeping pests out, from keeping pests from getting in. They can't get into a glass jar with a metal lid. They just can't. They can chew through cardboard. They can chew through, you know, like the foil type containers. They can chew through plastic, but glass is durable and it's guaranteed that no pests are getting in unless they're already in your food and you're putting it in there. Also, vacuum sealing your foods works great with glass jars, and keeping things, of course, in food grade buckets with a lid is great, even if they're not in a Mylar bag. I have stuff in food grade buckets that aren't in Mylar bags, and some things that don't even have oxygen absorbers in them, just because I cycle through them so regularly, and I haven't had a problem with anything getting in there or growing in there. So, but definitely food grade buckets. And if you're going to want to store it and lengthen the shelf life of it, I think it's actually best to make sure you have a really good airtight lid, and I always go with the gamma lids. So all my 5-gallon buckets in my pantry have gamma lids. Yes, it's an investment, but so is food, and your food is kind of like an insurance. It's your food security. You're going to rely on it, and there's nothing worse than investing and making that investment to be sure your family is good and able to be sustained for a period of time should an emergency occur, or even if you just have a financially bad season in your life, like job loss, medical, anything can happen at any given time, or you get sick and you miss a couple days and you're super tight on money. You can eat out of that pantry and you can save money that way, and you can also get ahead on inflation. We're still eating through things that we got a couple years ago at really good prices compared to what they are now. It is crazy going into the stores, and I mean, like every time I go to Safeway, when I have to run up there for produce or something, I just ran up there the other day and he's like, it's like $400. We just went grocery shopping. We did Sam's Club. We did Azure, and it was just like, some produce, some milk, a container of almond milk for my whey protein smoothies. It was just a handful of things, honestly, like just a couple bags. And he's like, how is this $400? And I think like the kids, I got them shampoo and conditioner because they were out of that. But yeah, it added up to like $400, and coffee creamer for my 2 daughters, because my 2 older daughters like coffee now. And I don't buy coffee creamer for me. I drink it black, or I drink lattes. Stay away from that sugar. And most of the coffee creamers nowadays are like bioengineered. Almost everything I pick up is bioengineered. So anyway, all that to say, just with the cost of everything right now, it is really smart to start building your pantry, because I honestly don't see prices coming down. I know they fluctuated back and forth. Some things have come down a little bit, but usually after that they go back up, and they go back up higher than they originally were. So I don't think we're going to get a break anytime soon from inflation. I think it's going to get a whole lot worse. So I definitely am really big on food storage. And if you have not yet started, start doing that gradually. Start as you can afford to. When you go to the grocery store, buy an extra of something that you go through the most. If you go through ketchup the most, buy an extra bottle or 2 of ketchup. Look for deals, look for savings, but on things that you normally would buy. And then when you see them, get a couple extra and just put them back, and keep doing that and rotate and cycle through things. But those are the 10 mistakes that I have made during my journey of food storage and creating a long-term pantry. And I have been doing this since 2017. The end of 2017, I had started venturing into this, and I have been doing it since. And I got a really well-established pantry now that I'm completely confident can get us through a lot, or a lengthy amount of time if need be, should a situation arise where we have to solely depend on our pantry. I hope this video was helpful. If you guys have any tips or suggestions or things that you have been through and you want to leave them down in the comment section, go ahead. And I really like seeing the conversations that unfold in the comment section with others. I think it's really helpful to kind of help each other right now. Especially with this is a really important topic, and this is something we all should be doing. We should be getting our homes in order, and we should be filling in the gaps and making sure everything is stocked up for us, for our needs. And the way I look at it is, I know a lot of people have said in comments, you know, they can't afford to, they're on really tight budgets or Social Security or just really small funds. And I want to say, honestly, anything you can do is helpful. You know, don't go in debt over it. Don't put yourself in a really bad situation. But there's definitely an urgency right now and a lot of people are noticing it. There's right now, and I think it's just wise to try and do what you can and do whatever you can. Not everybody can. There's a lot of people who cannot afford just going to the grocery store. I see people picking and choosing all the time, and you can tell that's what they're doing. They'll look at something and kind of just, you know, walk away from it. So just do what you can, and it honestly takes time. It took me a lot of years to build up my pantry and get a system down that actually worked for us. So it definitely is not something that happens overnight, but in my honest opinion, you do what you can do, and you do things the best way you can. But at the end of it all, I truly believe that God will provide for us and for our needs. The Bible says he will never leave us or forsake us, and I truly believe that, and I say this as a testimony because we've been through it. I didn't start stocking up a long-term pantry in 2017 for nothing. We hit a financial season where we couldn't afford to go buy groceries. I couldn't go to the store and go buy 2 bags of salad for dinner. It was tough. It was really tough. You know, my husband worked his butt off. People just didn't want to pay. There's those customers that just take forever to pay and they're always late or whatever. And it was just a rut we were in. We had the money coming, didn't know when it was coming, and it was late, and we went weeks and weeks and weeks. I mean, I wouldn't even say check to check. We were like struggling to get by. But I will say, during that time, as trying as it was, we had to lean on God. We had to lean on our faith. That trial that we had went through really strengthened us in our faith. So it's funny because we were struggling so hard, but God met all our needs. We had a roof over our head. We never had to shut power off. We had running water. We had food in the house. It wasn't a lot, but we had food. We had diapers. We had our 5th baby on the way. I was due anytime, and there's a coyote across the street. Anyway, but all that to say, God totally provided, and we never went without. We always had, even if it was bare minimum basics, the main necessities, not the wants, not the desires, the main necessities were there. We always had food in our stomach at the end of the night, even if it was spaghetti like 3 days in a row. God provided for us. So I truly trust that we just do the best that we can, and I have faith that God will provide for us in the areas that we are lacking. So anyway, keep your faith. I will see you guys on the next video. Until then, take care and God bless.